and gentlemen, welcome back. We'll continue now. It's time to get inspired even more, as we say here in Czech. Behind every successful man, there is a strong woman, but it may work the other way around as well. And in this case, it would be behind a successful woman, there is a strong and successful man. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing a power couple. Both have had impressive careers in managerial positions, leading teams in various countries around the globe. Yet, when their family began to grow, she felt she wants to go home, and he decided to follow her. So welcome Tania and Vassili Moigne. I start with Vassili because before this event, I called Tania to get some information, what would be nice to talk about. And immediately when I called her, she started a 10-minute talk about how great her husband is. So, I feel it's great to have the chance to introduce you to the people that all know Tania. But I start with a question, how it is to be the husband of Tania Moigne. Yeah, microphones.
Well, it's absolutely wonderful to be the husband of Tania. We've been together for 30 years, and every year we ask each other, do we want more? Every year I say yes. It's incredible. I learned a lot through Tania.
Yeah, it was a bit touching the topic that even now, when Tania, after 18 years, left the CEO position of Google, and there was a big announcement about an investment into your InTouch startup, they wrote a company of a husband of a former Google CEO, Tania Moigne.
Absolutely, this happens all the time, and I'm completely fine with it because I'm super happy that she gets in the limelight. Yes, I do get that a lot. Wherever I go, it's always, Vassili, are you the husband of... And that's fine, I don't mind, and I'm happy for her.
So Tania, behind a successful woman, there is a strong and successful man.
Well, I'd like to say I really admire Vassili for managing the situation where anywhere you go in the country where your wife carries your name, it's not your own country, and anywhere you say who you are, the first reaction typically is, you're the husband of. And we often laugh about it, but I can imagine for a man this is not an easy position to be, and I have a lot of respect for him that he was not only able to just laugh about it, but also really supported me for all those years, because you can imagine when you work in the job like this, it's not just the time consumption, but it's a huge stress. I think the session before, for me, the bigger the responsibility was, the bigger the stress. And I think when you come home, I don't know how you do it, but for me, it was always the challenge to leave the stress, not just not to think about it, but that inner stress that you cannot really completely isolate from yourself. And then you bring it all home and they need to live with it, your kids, your partners. And this is difficult. And when it takes 18 years, which was in my case, basically my son was 5 years when I took the job, and he's 22 now, right? So it's a long journey. It's been a long journey. But I think the key thing is when there is a support at home, such a level of support as I get, it's much easier. And maybe one more thing, if I may, I was really lucky, not only because of this mindset. We changed the roles, we shifted the roles. For a long time, I was following Vassili. For many years, he was in a way, in terms of at least what was visible for people, he was kind of following me. But what the privilege I had was we really could talk about what we're doing, each of us, because we spent time together at Microsoft. We work in the same industry. So I think also professionally, having a partner at home that is really consultant, your most honest critic, that asks you these questions that make you think, that's a big value. A lot of partners, even professional partners, don't have it. So that was additional benefit, I would say, that I was enjoying.
And one thing I want to rebound on, one of the principles that we operate on is absolute equality. And so when we reverse the roles, and she was leading or I was leading, it's completely natural. For me, it's completely normal. And that respect we have for each other was absolutely, it helped a lot in that process.
I must say that, now we know you following Tania here to Czech Republic, but first, I think it was Tania moving to Munich to be with you. Yes. Then you both moved to London, and then it was Tania deciding, I want to go back.
Oh yeah, that was a very strong statement. Yes, I remember. I'll never forget that. We're sitting in London in the office, at home, and I come home, and Tania looks very serious. She's like, "Silly, we're moving to Prague."
So that was not a question.
And I told her, "Are you serious? That's a question." She said, "Yes." That was it. Yeah, it was easy for me because it was either going to be Paris or it was going to be Prague. I know Paris. I've lived there for a long time. So Prague, I didn't know it was easy. Of course, it was a yes. I never regretted that choice.
But it was not only changing the place you live. It was changing the way you live. You left your managerial positions. You started your business.
Yes, that's okay. I mean, it's completely fine, and I'm used to changing countries. I've lived in many countries, and when I decided to go with Tania or for Tania, that was part of the package, and I never regretted it 1 second. It was not easy going to Prague. It's a cultural shock, but we all go through that. It's completely okay. It's a great country to be in.
Did you say it was part of the package or I was part of the package?
No, it.
Okay.
But maybe let me add a little bit to it, because at the time our son was half a year old. We were 34, 35, and we were living in London. And Vassili was working on the mobile development. This was 2003. This was the time when you would not read your emails on the phone. And Vassili was in the job working directly with the engineering team at Microsoft in US on product development, which is like the most important thing in these tech companies, is to design the future product. And he was leading the mobile strategy for Microsoft. So global role, and we knew we're staying in London for the next year maximum, and then we're leaving. And he was given jobs in Singapore and Seattle. It does matter because it adds to the picture. So we were just mentally preparing. We knew we have to leave London. We had a 3 years contract there. And the next option, and the conversation for a long time, was either Seattle or Singapore. This was the mindset before our son was born. And then when he was born, and I, for the first time in this relationship after 7 years in English, started to speak Czech to Arsène. Of course, I started to speak Czech. And he started to speak French. Of course, with our son, I realized, oh my God, if I go to Singapore and to Seattle, Arsène is not going to speak Czech. He will not have these connections. So this is why, one day he comes home, it was like, Arsène was like 6 months, and I'm like, Vassili, we're moving to Prague. And he was like, are you serious? Meaning, like, we had these conversations about Seattle or Singapore. And I'm like, yes, I think I am. And his answer was, it was amazing. He was like, okay, so let me speak to my boss. And that was the only response I got. Let me speak to my boss. And then he talked to his manager. She was a woman, Judy. She was great. And she was basically counting on him moving to US to the global team. And he says, no, I'm moving to Prague. So from the job perspective, suddenly from global role, you go to regional, smaller role. And then, of course, a few years later, he left because it was not so exciting anymore. But I just wanted to give this context because it was not just he was going with me to my country. He was completely shifting his career path, his direction, and that was a big deal.
Are you thinking, how would it be if you wouldn't move to Prague and you would go to Seattle or Singapore?
I've been living outside of France for 37 years. I've lived in so many countries that I probably would have continued. And I absolutely wanted Tania to leave the Czech Republic and to experience living outside, because you get a few slaps in the face when you do that. And I think it's extremely important, especially if we want to build Europe. We have to leave outside of our country and in other countries to understand how they think and how they think differently. And so that was a very important process for me. So I was happy to come to Prague because for me it was going to be another cultural shock. And it was a shock, of course.
I can imagine. But also, Tania, for you, you had the possibility, if you would stay in London or with Microsoft, you would get a part-time job. You could stay at home partly with Arsen, with your son, and work at a good position. When you came to Czech and you decided to go to Prague, you knew there is not the option because nobody's used to have part-time working mother. So, well, now yes, but that time.
Yes, it was one of these formative moments for our family when we decided to come here. It impacted both of our careers. Eventually, I knew I have to leave the job because local branch of Microsoft was not ready to offer part-time jobs at that time. We're talking 20 years ago. And as I explained with Vassili, he also changed. So for me, it was difficult, probably even more than for Vassili, because I felt like I came back here after 7 years. I was married, I had a child, I had this Le Moigne name. Nobody could really understand what it is about. I didn't have a job, and I was going through very tough time emotionally because I felt I should be happy. I have everything I always wanted. I have a great partner for life. I have a child. I'm living back in this country. How come I'm not happy? And I think it took me a few years of really strong work on myself to get back in shape. So it was challenging, but then I did games for kids.
So you came to Prague. You spent, which is also unusual with the women of your status. You stayed 4 years with your son on maternity leave, but not really, because you were working on the board games. By the way, any more games coming, even though your son is 22?
Well, I gave this business to a fantastic lady. Her name is Agata Kristina Křižová. She runs Agatin Svět. But there is a lot of need for financial literacy of children. And I'm just going to do mentoring and consulting of the lady that approached me that she's going to be launching new games. I'm very happy about it. And that's great.
And you started your businesses after deciding you don't need a corporate word anymore. But now, I already mentioned, you have the InTouch startup. I was just wondering, because it's AI for lonely people. How did you came with that idea? Weren't you lonely in Prague when you moved here?
It's actually it's a system of calling senior people who are lonely so that they feel less lonely. Because there are 2 billion old people in the world, seniors, 400 million of them feel loneliness, either physical or emotional, on a regular basis. And that's a huge number. And if you look at the curve of population, it's only going to get worse. More senior people, less young people to take care of them, so that loneliness feeling is only going to increase. And when you have large numbers of people like this, how do you scale? And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to call these people and actually make them feel better. And we use AI for this because with AI we can scale.
And is it that you had some data and you saw the business plan, or is there something personal in it?
It's very personal. I started with my mother because I've been living outside of France for 37 years, and I saw my mother getting older and alone, living in a farm, and I always have that guilt, terrible guilt feeling in the stomach. that even though I'm calling her regularly, I never do enough to actually take care of her, and am I doing everything that I can to take care of her? And that feeling, sitting in the stomach, is extremely strong, and you always fear something happens. So I started thinking, how can I do it? We use some technology, but technology when you're 80 years old, it's really tough. So I didn't want any technology, so I just did phone calls. Because phone calls, people, the last thing they will lose is the ability to pick up the phone. So it's very personal, and that's why I have the drive to do it, and I have here a super AI person working with us in the company. It's a fantastic project, love it, lots of energy. And I'm happy at 57 to do another startup.
Another startup, another idea. But I would like to look at your probably a bit personal life. You live in Prague, at the edge of Prague. You have a wonderful house with a partly English garden, or at least a Victorian glass house, which is really amazing. But that's not all. You have hens, silkies, is that hedvábničky, silkies.
And padu.
And
paduanki.
okay.
It's another type.
It's another type. So and bees. And I wanted to ask who's taking care of those. So it's you, obviously.
That's you. Yeah. I love it, but I did it as a child. My dad taught me how to take care of the bees when I was a child. I forgot everything. I traveled, and when I came here, it's the right environment. So I said, let's do it again, and I do it with my son, because to take care of bees, you get scared because it's stressful. And when you do it together and you actually harvest the honey and you open the box when the honey flows, when you do it with your son, it's a very strong moment. And so the three of us are in the kitchen, we fill the boxes of honey, and it's priceless. And also another reason why I do it is we live in the internet world. Everything goes so fast. But with vegetables, with chicken, with bees, they don't care how fast the internet is. It's still very slow. So, and also to have the feet in the ground. I think it's something that we forget in our society. And I want my son to have the feet on the ground and to know where food comes from and to grow your own food and have the patience. And I think it's a fundamental value in life. I want him to know it, and that's why we do it. And we have together this pleasure of doing it. We have some pictures. It's pretty cool.
And Tania is the one tasting the honey and eating the eggs.
Exactly.
I can imagine. You've mentioned your son, 22 years old, Arzen, who is now interning at LVMH, studying 2 universities. Mm-hmm. So he got a lot from you both, I guess.
I think it's a combination of both. He's got Tania's energy level. Something I admire in Tania is her ability to connect with people. You can put Tania in a room. She knows nobody. In 5 minutes, she will know people. I completely admire that ability she has, and Arsène has this as well. And I'm much more of the bear, so it will take me about 2 months to achieve the same thing. She does it in 5 minutes. I admire this. So he's got this, and then he's got this love for travel that I have.
And Tania, you know, I've seen one of the latest posts on Facebook was Tania's post of pictures of her boys, Vassili and Arsène, in Patagonia, and writing "next time with me." So you also share the passion for traveling, or?
It depends.
Depends, okay.
I need to have some level of comfort. Doesn't have to be 5-star hotel. He never took me to any 5-star hotel, ever. But yeah, I need a bed and, you know, some like food on daily basis, you know. But when they go, so they started to go on their boys trip, because then nobody bugs them, you know, and they can do all what they want, and they can sleep in these dirty trucks and go to these dangerous zones, etc. And I was like in this Google job, you know, I was so stressed that, you know, don't take me on vacation when I will stress. I don't want to stress, you know. So they go on that boys trip. And I take Arsène for a few days a year, 3, 4, 5 days, and we go to Mikulov, or we go to Volkin Jeseníky, and it's just very basic, but it's our time together. And the conversation is different when we 3 of us, and the conversation is very different when we go on 101, and it's just fantastic. Yeah.
I wanted to add something. The reason why I do this trip, and we do this, is because communication with your child, especially at the time of adolescence, is extremely important. As long as you speak, you communicate, you can go through any type of stress, any difficult situation. And these moments are moments where we can intensively talk. We talk all the time with my son and Tania as well. But those moments where you can go a bit deeper and you can touch topics which are more difficult because you are outside of the normal thing, that's extremely valuable. And that's why we do this trip. And we still do them. He's 22 and we still do. And we're planning the one for next year.
And actually, I always get the best time with my kids when we go one-on-one
Exactly.
to a mountains trail.
Exactly.
That's the best place to talk. So I see you have the same. But now, we are nearly out of the time, but I still want to ask one more question. What now? What now after Google? I think both. Will it be the same business again, or?
I'll just start. I see Tania now, she has a level of energy that I've not seen in a long time. So I don't know what is coming. I know she's doing a fantastic project for women, the next station. But I see a level of energy I've not seen in a long time. Absolutely love it. So whatever, Tania, you do, keep that energy level because it's fantastic. And share it with the others.
Yeah, well, it's very funny how life works because you're planning and then things happen completely, they go to completely sideways. So I was getting ready for this exit for many years, right? I knew it's coming and I was internally preparing myself for it, but it took a long time. And so we were kind of thinking, when I finally quit this job, we're gonna have both time to go and we will do this half-year travel. Guess what, I am out. He's like 24/7 building his company. So there's like no way we can now go and travel, but that's fine. Otherwise, of course, for me, it's a big change. It's a completely unique experience. I actually think it's a topic by itself, the whole exit. How do you leave relationships after such a long time? Doesn't even have to be a company, it can be really a relationship. So it's difficult. I think that time before and after, it's a very unique time. And I'm lucky because I had few very close people that helped me to prepare for that time, go through it, and also supported me as I am going through it now, the change. But in general, I would think for me it's a huge relief, combination of relief, but also gratefulness, I was in a unique job for a long time. I was really privileged to work for that company in such a position. And what we built together here was exceptional, right? So that's fantastic. On the other side, I was very tired last 3-4 years. I was planning sabbatical, I couldn't take it. So I knew the time is coming. So what Vassili says, he didn't see this energy for a long time. He didn't, because I didn't have it. I feel it's coming back, right? And I think it's fantastic. So I'm really happy, and I'm very open-minded in regards to what's coming next. Yeah. I don't have any specific plans. I have few projects where I'm starting to get into more, but it's an incredible discovery of time, space, and freedom again, which I didn't have probably ever in my life.
I was just thinking, who met Tania in the last 3 years? Imagine that was no energy. So it must be hard now. That's why Vassili said, and share it with the others. So thank you very much, Tania, Vassili, Moigne. That's the right pronunciation, but I usually say it the short one. So thank you.